Nano Machine. Bai, Anhongweolja. Chapter 88, The Sixth Sword, Part 1. Mun-ku, who was sitting down on a small rock, also became confused. It was understandable if it was just to look at the overall balance, but fixing every small detail was unlikely to happen from looking at everyone at once. Should I watch too? She too had learned the seven-demon sword and read through the books tens of times that she now remembered it. Maybe she could also give a few pieces of advice. Why don't we give it a try anyway? Hu Bong offered to try it with the other hesitant cadets. In Hu Bong's experience, whatever Yoan said never ended weirdly. Ready your sword. Yoan shouted and all 17 cadets prepared to perform the seven-demon sword. Oh well. I guess he'll change it to private lessons if it doesn't work out. Most of the cadets thought of the same thing. Yoan ordered to Nano. Nano, activate augmented reality. Yoan's eyes then shook and he saw lines drawing various pieces of information about the 17 cadets. Nano, analyze all these 17 people and see if there is any movement they're getting wrong with the seven-demon sword. Understood. Activating multi-tutorial mode on 17 entities. Target martial art, seven-demon sword. With Nano's voice, Yoan then saw 17 circles locking onto each of the students. Yoan shouted, going from the first formation. First sword. First sword. The cadets repeated the name of the formation and began to move. Wooden swords shot through the air as the 17 cadets all swung their swords in unison. Kumouned silently. There were many cadets who were not doing it correctly. Actually, most of them were a mess besides the 3 cadets who were top-class warriors already. The cadets stopped in place after finishing the first formation. There was just too many things that needed fixing. Mun-ku tried to send a telepathic message to Yoan on what she had seen for the few cadets that she had seen at least, but Yoan spoke first. We're training, so I'll call out numbers. First, 31st cadet. Yes, sir. Your arm is weak when you start the first sword, and that causes all connected movements to become weak as well. Be careful of that. Yes, sir. The 31st cadet, Yuk Kinming, shouted back. This was only the start. Yoan then went over to the other cadets. After going through few, Yoan called out Hu Bong's number. 23rd cadet. Yes, sir. Your sword drops when you move. On the third movement, you only use wrist when you step with your right. You need to use your waist, not only the wrist. Yes, sir. Thank you. Hu Bong answered excitedly at such detailed advice. Mun-ku was shocked. Hu Bong was one of the few cadets that she observed, and Yoan had gotten everything correct. Did he really see what every cadet did? Yoan then went over to the other cadets. After the number of cadets receiving advice went over the count of 10, all the cadets were astonished. Did he really see everyone? He wasn't just saying it? The 22nd cadet, Kong Jino, just joined yesterday. He was dumbfounded and suspicious at the same time. However, the cadets who listened to their faults seemed to agree. 22nd cadet. Ygriyes. Jino frowned as he answered. He was a top-class warrior and he had the ability to do the seven-demon sword more perfectly than the other cadets, but he didn't put in much effort in doing so. He was at the very back, so he thought Yoan would not see him anyway. Huh? Yoan was glaring at him however. Surely Yoan was angry at his laziness. You think I would not notice if you didn't put in any effort? Ugh. What was that slow, clumsy sword movement? Do you not want to do this? Yoan snapped and Jino flushed red from embarrassment. He couldn't even find the right words to respond. He claimed that Yoan would never know when the cadet next to him, Imuhan, told him to stop fooling around. Em sorry. If you do that again, then you will be practicing the sword formations alone. Jino then went down on his both knees. This will never happen again, master. This gave every cadet the chills. They thought to never do things without letting Yoan know. Yoan accepted Jino's apology. You must act accordingly if you have the power. But you are second to being correct among everyone else here. Make sure you do it right next time. Second? I'm only second? Who was first then? Yoan then turned to the 11th cadet, Imuhan, with a satisfied voice. I have nothing much to say to you, 11th cadet. You were better than everyone here. Thank you, master. Jino frowned. Jino and Yuhan were always competing with each other, so Jino didn't feel so good about losing. He then regretted for not doing it right. After Yoan met all 17 cadets, they began to trust Yoan on what he was doing. Okay, we'll go with the first formation again. Remember what I told you and repeat slowly. Yes, sir. And the swords began to move again. Not everything was fixed at once, but all the movements had gotten much better now. Wow, Ku gasped in astonishment. This proved that Yoan was not only a good fighter, but he was also a good teacher. He's really amazing. Of course, all this was due to Nano's ability. Yoan's eyes saw the analysis notes that Nano placed over all the cadets. Without this knowledge, however, it only made Mun-ku more surprised. After going through the first movement again, Yoan pointed out their mistakes and had them go over remaining 7 formations to fix it. It seemed like it wouldn't take too long to learn the 7 demon sword at this rate. There were some who were falling behind like Hubong, Jin Guk, and Machel, but they put more effort, which was fortunate. We'll train until dinner. Yes, sir. And 10 days had passed after the training started. It took a bit more time for everyone to perfect all the 7 demon sword formations. Even if Yoan put in all the effort he could, it still took time for most of the cadets to learn, especially those who weren't from high-ranked clans. The last, or the 7th sword, was especially hard for most cadets. Part of it was due to Ojong joining the team late, after he spent 5 days in the medical room. At least it was fortunate that Ojong was talented enough to catch up quickly. And the groups who scattered to train on their own, gathered in one place. I lost. Baki spoke and turned away. Ko Wonger burst out into laughter for winning his bet. Ha ha ha. So, you accept your loss. Good. The winner who taught his teammates to learn the sword skill faster was Wonger. He took a total of 7 days to train his teammates. Galen also only needed 9 days, whereas Baki took 10 days. How did you manage to teach them in 7 days? Baki too realized that it took more time to teach cadets who weren't that experienced in martial arts. However, Wonger had managed to do it, making Baki curious. Ha ha ha. There's not much. You just have to ram it in until you learn it. Ram it in? Wonger then looked back at his teammates and grinned while all of his cadets flinched and shuddered in fear. Chapter 89, The Sixth Sword, Part 2. Within that 10-day training period for the 7 demon sword, Baki, Ho Sangwa, and Jia Wumin's groups also filled up. Baki only needed a few more members, so he was able to fill it up quickly, but Sangwa and Wumin took 3 days to recruit more cadets. Total of 19. The new cadets fell into 2 main categories. There were those who came to admire Yoan for his feat of defeating Ho Jincheng and Chun Yuchan, and the other group consisted of those who were not happy with the current 6-clan system in the cult, thus wanting a new wave of change from Yoan. Although these new groups had 2 different ideas, they were recruited carefully. These groups became more connected with each other because of Yoan. Wow! That group only has girls. When did that kind of group form? I want to join that group. The boy cadets couldn't peel their eyes off of Ho Sangwa's team. Her group was the first only girl group in the academy at the moment. It was bound to gain attention from boys in their puberty. Ha! Boys! Hee hee. The girl cadets also welcomed that kind of reaction. Some of them even explicitly flirted with the other cadets. However, Chun Yoan was more interested in the cadets who could become group leaders. 708th Cadet Che Takim and 52nd Cadet Wu Sojung. Both of them were entering the Master Level Warrior level. Che Takim was from a high-ranked clan of the Westgate clan who didn't show himself even during the second test. Takim had visited Yoan's dormitory to speak to him. Water rots if it sits. I don't want to see the cult wasting power from the 6 clans competing against each other. You are a Chun, but you are not from 6 clans. I think you might have what it takes to change things. Yoan liked Takim, who was passionate about changing the cult, so he accepted him. And Wu Sojung, whom Ho Sangwa brought over as a friend, was rather aggressive. Only the strong survive here. You show me your strength, and I will serve you for my life. Oh? Sojung challenged Yoan and lost after just 3 formations. Yoan only used the butterfly blade dance and it was enough. And with 2 more master-level warriors, Yoan's forces became more powerful. There was also more good news. Congratulations on becoming masters. Ko Wonger and Ho Sangwa had become master-level warriors since they didn't slack off on their own training when the team training was over. Thank you, Master. Ho Sangwa was glad that she had become a master-level warrior. She was now the 2nd master-level girl cadet. This isn't enough. I will do my best to be the first sword of the master. Ko Wonger was not satisfied, however. The words from Wonger ignited a weird competition between cadets. First sword? HM. With an increasing number of cadets, they began ranking themselves unofficially. One of the members of Baki's group, Ichan, spoke out. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I think the first sword title fits my leader Baki, or Mun-ku better. Yes. They are stronger in terms of power. Cadets from Baki's group agreed and Wanger's members began to respond. Wanger is strong enough to claim that. I'm offended, thank you. He can be the second or third sword. What? Members began to speak up with their thoughts, arguing with each other. This made all the group leaders surprised. Yoan then heard Chaitakim's telepathic message through his ears. I expected this would happen as you have many who follow you, but it was faster than I expected. Master, it's time for you to decide on the ranking of these members. Loyalty is good, but the cult relies on power. You have to keep that in mind. Yoan nodded at Takim's message. It seemed like it was time for Yoan to clear out the ranks, as that was needed for an organization to function properly. What should I do? The best thing to do was to have everyone duel against each other since that was the demonic cult's tradition, but it didn't seem like a good idea to duel against one another since the third test was just around the corner. He couldn't let anyone get hurt in the process. Yoan thought for a while and finally made a decision. Everyone, be quiet. He didn't speak loudly, but every cadet became silent at once. Yoan's influence over the 71 cadets was commendable. When everyone became silent, Yoan began to speak. I have heard your opinions. I think it is time for me to appoint our ranks. Do you all agree? Yes, sir. The cadets answered in unison. They also became curious as to how Yoan would decide on these ranks. Obviously, some members were more powerful than others, and they would most likely stand in front of the other members. 6 people. Chapter 90, The Sixth Sword, Part 3. 6. The cadets wondered if this maybe meant that Yoan was going to appoint only 6 high-rank members. I will appoint the top 6 warriors. They will not have ranks over each other and they will be titled the 6 swords. Master, what is the reason for having the 6 swords? Wu Sojung raised his hand and asked. The other cadets also had the same question. If we graduate from the academy, we will be fighting against 6 clans. I need the 6 swords who will complete that job on the front lines of battle. Everyone nodded. All of the people here knew that Yoan was trying to fight the 6 clans and create a new demonic cult. But wouldn't we just be repeating the same thing then? Ko Wanger and a few others frowned. It was still far into the future, but if they managed to defeat the 6 clans and the 6 swords replaced them, then they could end up in a power struggle again. However, Yoan continued speaking and soon removed that fear. But the 6 swords today will not remain 6 swords forever. I will open a competition each year to give the title to more powerful warriors. Oh! The cadets gasped in excitement. This meant that the title was not going to remain permanent. Everyone would be granted an equal opportunity to prove themselves and rise above the others, just like how the demonic cult normally functioned. This will continue even if I reach the top of the cult. Wanger, Baki, and the other cadets then nodded in satisfaction. There were only 72 cadets here in total, but if Yoan really took over the entire cult, then it was bound to be open to all the members of the cult. This would certainly put an end to the current 6-clan system. Since we are facing the important 3rd test soon, I will simplify our process to choose the 6 swords this time around. Yes, sir. It would be too time-consuming to have everyone duel each other, and the power balance between the cadets were too great anyway. Those who are masters, please step forward. Everyone else, step back. Many of the cadets took a few steps back, leaving Ko Wanger, Baki, Munku, Ho Sanghua, Chaitakim, and Wu Sojung behind. It was exactly these 6 cadets that required no competition. I'm sure no one will complain about having these members as the 6 swords. Yes, sir. No one had any complaints since these members were significantly more powerful than the rest of them. Some cadets like Kong Jino, Im Yuhan, Jia Wumin, and Oh Zhang had the urge to become stronger to take the spot later on. Then the first sword. Baki then raised his hand to intervene. Wait. I have an idea. What is it? Since we now have the 6 swords, it'll be better for us to figure out the ranks between each other. The other cadets all nodded. They liked the fact that they had been chosen as the 6 swords, but it seemed it was better to have the right title according to the level of power. It was a matter of pride. Should I be happy about this? It didn't feel bad for his members to compete against each other for the best servant title. Yoan smiled and agreed with the idea. With the master's approval, all they had to do now was compete. Oh, I'm still injured so I forfeit. Munku gave up on fighting first, so she automatically became the 6th sword. It seemed like Baki wanted to fight Munku since she seemed to be the most powerful warrior here, but it couldn't be helped. Don't hurt each other. The fight was to be held at once, battle royale style. Yoan told them to not use more than 30% of their internal energy to not hurt one another. Then, shall we start? Wang Er took off his top and flexed his large muscles. It was to bring up his morale, but it wasn't a good choice. It made Ho Sanghua and Wu Sojung feel disgusted at the toplessness, and they both decided to attack Wang Er first. Ha 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 ha. This is good. Ugh, this muscle gorilla. Ko Wang Er was still laughing while he fought. The 5 warriors fought for quite a while. The first one to fail was Wu Sojung. Ugh. I'm ashamed. He didn't think he would lose to Ho Sanghua, who was a girl. Wu Sojung thought he would defeat her easily, but his shoulder almost got pulled out from its joint. Ugh. The second to lose was Che Takim. He had intervened in the fight between Baki and Ko Wang Er, and he fell after getting hit by their attacks. Ha! Ho Sanghua gave up and sank to sit on the ground about 30 minutes later. She thought she had a good amount of stamina, but she couldn't last as long as Baki or Ko Wang Er. Both of the boys fought fiercely. They were also always competing with each other, and thus they did not want to give up. Each of their groups cheered for their leaders, but the experience paid off. Baki increased his kick power with his energy and put down Wang Er's large body. Wang Er tried to fight back by putting all his strength in his muscles, but he couldn't overpower Baki's energy. Wang Er laid flat on the ground and panted. Ha, ha, I lost. Waha, Baki won. Baki's group all got up and began to cheer. Meanwhile, Wang Er's members became depressed. Leader. They ran up to Wang Er and helped him stand up. After the long fight, the rank of the 6 swords was decided. Baki, the first sword. Ko Wang Er, the second sword. Ho Sanghua, the third sword. Che Takim, the fourth sword. Wu Sojung, the fifth sword. Mun Ku, the sixth sword. And thus was the birth of Chun Yowen's 6 swords. It's getting there. Yowen clenched his fist as he looked over at his members. He had come into the academy with nothing in his hands, and now he had forces that cannot be ignored, especially considering the clans of these members outside of the academy. However, Yowen was not satisfied yet. I need to become more powerful than anyone else so that no one in the demonic cult will ever try to defy me.